what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and we're back here with our post-festival predictions. We've done Best Picture. Now it is time for acting. So if you're new here, consider dropping a subscription down below. But now it's time to talk acting, and I guess I'm up first with the lead actor categories this time. There's not really much movement at the top because I still have Timothée Chalamet winning for A Complete Unknown.
That's wild to me. I'm going to need an explanation here. We've just had so many contenders come out of the festivals, including Adrien Brody's career best performance, an Oscar-winning actor's career best performance. Why can't that win again? I don't know. What are you thinking with Timmy?
I mean, it could win again, but my big thing for Timmy right now is Searchlight clearly has faith in this movie, in this performance. They would not bump this movie up. They would not rush this movie if they did not think they had a win contender on their hands. Then, I mean, Timmy, it's the same thing I said last time around. He is the golden boy right now. I don't think the Academy is going to pull another Leo and just hold out time and time again. I feel like when he has a chance to actually win, they are going to make sure that he is at least in the conversation. He's had so many opportunities so far. He just hasn't had that meaty role yet, and I feel like this thing is going to be super transformative. He is singing, he's acting, he's wearing a prosthetic, he's checking off all the boxes. He is in a Searchlight film. He's going to have the campaign behind him. He's already out there for Dune so far. Once this movie comes out, it will just switch over to A Complete Unknown. Maybe this is a weaker film, but I mean, he is the center of attention at the end of the day. You talk about Adrien Brody and The Brutalist. He's getting raves, but I wouldn't say he's the center of attention. And then you have other films out there, maybe like Conclave, that I would say is about equal buzz to A Complete Unknown at this moment, and Ralph Fiennes is the highlight of that movie, but the movie kind of came and it kind of went already. The wide release date is later this month, but so far the buzz doesn't seem there on a wide scale to win, where I think A Complete Unknown is going to come out and Timmy's just going to be this giant thing inside the awards discussion.
You said that Searchlight has a ton of faith in this, and I feel like you're making a few reaches there. There's many reasons they could push the film into this year other than they think that he can win Best Actor. It's had multiple test screenings at this point, and nothing from those test screenings has been overly positive or overly through the moon for what he's doing in this movie. To me, this seems like a pretty solid nomination. But what we've seen time and time again is that when biopic winners win, it's because their films are really strong, or they have a career narrative. Looking at last week's Best Picture predictions, you had A Complete Unknown at number 9, and yet you have Timmy winning. And I have to ask you, do you think Rami Malek would have won for Best Actor if Bohemian Rhapsody was that low of the Best Picture lineup? Would Cillian Murphy have won last year if Oppenheimer was not that much of a contender? Gary Oldman and Will Smith are good counterpoints for Timmy. You could definitely make the argument. King Richard or Darkest Hour, those were not huge films for the biopic performance to win, but they had huge career narratives around them. Both Gary Oldman and Will Smith being veteran actors who people felt were overdue for a win at that point. So their films not being that strong, it didn't matter. But with Timothée Chalamet winning, he's a young guy. He's got his entire career ahead, and if the film isn't as strong, like you don't think it will be, then I feel like it doesn't work for him winning. So if you want him to win, that's fine. I'd say you should just move A Complete Unknown up into your top 5, because that's the type of strength the movie would need to get an actor like Timothy to win, in my opinion.
With the examples that you gave of Rami Malek, his film was pretty low until it had start to win things. And that's kind of where I am with A Complete Unknown at this moment as well. I have it in this bottom half of Best Picture because there is a world this movie comes out and it's as bad as some of these test screenings are saying, but there's the other world where it comes out and it starts to connect. The reason why Bohemian Rhapsody did so well in awards season was because of Rami Malek winning these big awards. These other nominations the film had came along with his strength.
The point that I'm making is, if you believe that Timothy is going to do all of these things, if you believe truly that he's going to be sweeping the season, then that should be reflected in how you're treating A Complete Unknown across the board, because he doesn't win without the film doing all of those things, and the film doesn't do all of those things without him winning. So if you think one's happening, it's the chicken and the egg. You know, you got to have both happen.
That is completely fair. I should move Complete Unknown. Like you said, it's currently at my number 9. It probably should be over stuff like The from Next Door, Nickel Boys, Conclave to be in that like 6th range in the Best Picture race.
I think that would be a fair spot for Timothée Chalamet to be in win contention. I would love to see that in your predictions, but that said, I don't personally think that Timothée Chalamet will do all of those things.
And that's completely fair, and I'm not going to talk about Adrian Brody or Ralph Fiennes. I haven't seen the movie. A lot of people out there have seen both of those films. I went to see Conclave in about 2-ish weeks, so I can talk more about Ralph Fiennes. Then I want to talk about something that almost all of us have seen already, and that is Coleman Domingo, because even though the buzz for Sing Sing continues to drop, it's no longer top 2, top 3, top 4 in the Best Picture race. I do think that Coleman Domingo will survive in this Best Actor field because he is the driving force around the campaign. While more people will talk about Macklin, Domingo is the face that they already know. He got nominated last year for Rustin, a film and a performance that were a lot less buzzy and a lot less acclaimed than what he's doing here in Sing Sing. And he can make it in last year over multiple actors who were in Best Picture nominated films. He can survive this year against actors who may be their film's only nomination. And I still think Sing Sing is looking at a package of picture, adapted, Macklin, and Domingo. And I still do have Macklin at my number 1, but we'll talk more about that when we get to supporting actor.
I completely agree with everything you said there. I think he survives even as the film is on a downward spiral. I just don't see any world where he's winning.
It's what we said right out of Sing Sing for both of us is like, this is a very good performance. It just doesn't have that like pizzazz, it doesn't have that sparkle factor that a lot of lead actor winners kind of have. And something I feel like we're going to talk a lot about in this episode. A lot of these major contenders this year aren't the main focus of their films, and you tend to look at acting winners. They usually, like 8 times out of 10, are the driving force of their movies. They're the reason why these films are so acclaimed. And if you have someone winning an acting award and they aren't the central point of the praise for the film, that it's a little bit of discorrelation there.
You're using that point as a way to take down why Adrian Brody might not win. I disagree. I think Adrian Brody is as much the driving force of The Brutalist as Cillian Murphy was for Oppenheimer. I would even go as far as to say it's a flashier performance, it's a louder performance, it's a bigger performance than what Cillian Murphy did. That was very subtle in comparison to what Adrian Brody is doing.
It's more the focus on The Brutalist is Brady Corbett. It's the direction more so than the acting. I know that Cillian Murphy survived last year.
Audiences see it, though. Audiences see it, and it's going to be Brody.
Then I'll change my tune then, but I think the main reason why Murphy survived last year was how much of a sweeper Oppenheimer was. If Oppenheimer wasn't dominating the season like it was, I think that Cillian Murphy could have lost Best Actor while Robert Downey Jr. still won Supporting Actor. And maybe we have that same thing here this year where The Brutalist is just that strong in picture where it will have to come along with it. And then the last person I want to talk about in lead actor is someone who we kind of had on the radar all year, even though other people have said, no way, people don't care about this movie, but it's Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice. I'll say this as someone who lives in America, someone who lives down the street from that last debate was, people want to talk about Donald Trump. Even if they say they don't want to, people want to talk about politics. They want to talk about Trump. They want to talk about the election. And The Apprentice is bringing all the things to people who don't like Trump to life. If Trump loses, this film can be seen as an extra middle finger to be like, haha, you lost, plus look at all this bad stuff you did. And then if he wins, it's like, hey, this is why he's bad. Why didn't people listen to us? And then Sebastian Stan is an actor who I feel like has been liked throughout his career. He just really hasn't had a chance to showcase his talents on a stage like the Oscars. And I think you could say a very similar thing to Coleman Domingo last year, where their films probably aren't the Best Picture race whatsoever, but their performance can be pushed through. And I can see him getting into SAG, Critics' Choice, Golden Globes. He probably won't make BAFTA. That's 3 out of 4, and that seems pretty well to get into the Best Actor race. And usually we have at least one actor who's not in a Best Picture film. I know last year was an exception, but this year you have a few to pick from, and I would say Sebastian Stan would currently be stronger than someone like Daniel Craig.
You said that this isn't in the Best Picture race, but I maintain that if The Apprentice hadn't been hit by the lawsuit and had been bought right away out of Cannes, we'd still be talking about this as a potential picture contender, at least for a nomination, because it has those love it or hate it reactions. People who like it talk about it. The people who hate it are going to try and slam it into the damn ground. Of course, some people are going to be fed up with talking about Trump, but other people thrive on complaining about him. And I feel like the minority of people who really love The Apprentice are going to vote for it like it's the most important movie of all time. I would venture a guess that a lot of those people are going to be actors. Actors like Robert De Niro, who at yesterday's Megalopolis Q&A spent a chunk talking about Trump. Someone like Robert De Niro is going to work the goddamn campaign trail for this movie. The other thing, you said this is going to miss BAFTA. I'm going to challenge that because I feel like this is going to do better outside of the US, simply because countries outside of the US love commenting on US politics. It is a spectator sport for us. This is coming from a Canadian who last night I went out to a bar where the people at the table next to me were talking about they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. This is Canada. We're still talking about it. And I would venture a guess that Britain is the same, that people like to dunk on the US. If anything, those American bodies might go, do we really want to do the Trump movie? I'm so tired of this. And it's also worth mentioning, I mean, who made the movie? It was the Canadians, it was the Brits, and it was the Danish. Those are the three countries that made The Apprentice. That to me says that international bodies might go further for Stan than anyone else.
One more point in favor of The Apprentice I just want to bring to the table is we've seen in the past smaller studios can pull off successful Oscar campaigns, especially when they focus on one specific category. We saw this with Willem Dafoe in Attorney's Gate, Andre Riseborough into Leslie, and then we saw just last year Golda in Makeup. And if they focus on Sebastian Stan, like all these points we just talked about here, he seems pretty easy into this Best Actor line that I think a lot of other pundits online have been saying, we have a strong top 3, we have a strong top 4. What do we do with our 5th slot? We don't know. And I just feel like Sebastian Stan makes a lot more sense than some of the other people that people are trying to just push into this category, especially considering how timely this film is and how just uninteresting some of these other films kind of sound like in terms of the award scope as a whole.
Now, we do have the exact same top 5, so I have nothing really to criticize here that you're missing, but gotta say, having seen Queer, Daniel Craig at number 6, that is way too high. And the protagonist at number 8, definitely too low. You should swap those guys around.
I originally had John David Washington in my top 5 when the film had its initial premiere at Telluride, but since that first premiere, I just feel like no one's talked about the piano lesson. I know it's Netflix. At the end of the day, I keep banging this drum almost every episode, how great they are at campaigning their actors, but they at least need some sort of discussion around their actors, and I don't know, I could see the piano lesson just being solely Danielle Deadwyler, or Deadwyler and maybe Washington, or maybe Sam Jack. It's just, I want to see more eyes on this film and people at least talking about it, because right now it just seems like this movie came out and since then it's just been crickets about it.
Definitely not Sam Jack. But, I mean, just remember last year or the year before, Netflix's movies, they, after their festival premieres, they kind of let them lie low until awards come around, then they start pushing them. I mean, after Nyad premiered last year, you would have never thought Annette Bening and Jodie Foster would get nominations. After Blonde premiered, you would have never thought that Ana de Armas would end up with an Oscar nomination. It's not what's happening in the couple of months after premieres, it's what happens after the film releases on Netflix. So to that point, if people are still not talking about John David Washington after the film comes out on Netflix, then yeah, you're right. Keep him low, low, low. But just because people aren't talking about him right now doesn't mean they won't be when the film releases.
We've talked about Netflix, we talked about their actresses. You just mentioned 2 of them who have gotten in the past. What is your current Best Actress lineup looking like right now?
I've got 2 Netflix options in my top 5, and just like always, Netflix will not win again this year. So currently my win pick remains Mikey Madison. I've had Mikey Madison for months. I think I've honestly probably had Mikey Madison ever since seeing the film at Cannes. I've been riding this for a while. She's a powerhouse in this movie, which seems to be one of the biggest of the year. And it's a film that is connecting with audiences as well as critics, which I think was one of the biggest worries that a lot of people had about Anora, is are regular people going to like this film? And what I said when I saw it at Cannes was, yes, the audience was electric seeing this, but with it winning the People's Choice runner-up, 3rd place or whatever, it's clear that this is connecting with audiences as much as it has with critics. In a category where the competition is being trimmed down left, right, and center by films either underperforming, I feel like she's a little bit undeniable, not just for a nomination, but also for a win. And it feels a lot to me like a Marlee Matlin in Children of a Lesser God, or Halle Berry in Monsters Ball, Reese Witherspoon Walk the Line, Jennifer Lawrence Silver Linings Playbook, Brie Larson Room type award, where you've got a young actor who is poised to be Hollywood's next big thing, who is just coronated as a welcome to the club. We see this in the Best Actress category all the time. It is almost a trope or a cliche where they give the young ingenue actress the award. The more people that see this film, the more people are talking about her as though this is like a Daniel Plainview, There Will Be Blood level performance. To me, the cards are stacked up right for her right now, and if the movie's winning Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay, you can bet your bottom dollar that Mikey Madison comes along with the Best Actress prize.
So much of her competition is just fleeing the scene. Their movies are ass, they are in supporting, it's a bow for those. Everyone you could put up against her has just moved down a peg or just left entirely. The main reason why I was never really on board with her to begin, because I know, like you have been saying, you've had her for almost this whole entire season, and even before then, you're like, I don't really feel confident in my lead actress pick, and then you saw the movie like, oh, this is the one winning. It's just the press material around this movie just doesn't read like lead actress winning core. But like you said, the more people that see the movie, the more fast it goes to. The people continue to love it. They continue to give her praise. So I'm sure just this great momentum is only going to continue to rise from here, and I can't wait to see this movie. I've seen like 3-4 weeks.
I'm so stoked for you to see it, and I hope that it's not your villain of the season as you're worried that it might be.
I don't know, just that trailer doesn't read like super great to me, but trailers can always be misconceiving, so I'm just hoping it's just a bad trailer.
Dylan, you gotta promise me you're gonna watch The Florida Project, because you watch that, your mind will be changed. That said, I do see another performance, only one other in the category that I think could usurp Mikey Madison and take over that win. And it's Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez. Typically what we've seen year in, year out is a narrative contender versus a strong film contender. There's Emma Stone, who already has an Oscar win, versus Lily Gladstone, who would be the first Indigenous winner ever. The year before, there was Michelle Yeoh, who would be the first Asian winner, versus Cate Blanchett in Tar, a film that critics loved and was getting awards all over the place. Now, both of those races went very different ways, and I'd say that in both times, it went to the stronger film between the two. Everything Ever All at Once versus Tar. Last year, Poor Things was evidently much stronger than Killers of the Flower Moon by the end of the year. So this year, I feel like it's going to come down to what is stronger, Anora or Emilia Perez, because our narrative contender is the first transgender Oscar winner. Eventually, we will have a transgender Oscar winner. The question is just, will it be this year? It's totally possible that she could come out on top here, but it's essentially a supporting performance, and it's in a film which continues to prove to be polarizing. That TIFF Audience Award shows that it is loved by some, but your Letterboxd feed, you can look through there, it is clearly hated by many, many people. And the review bombing for this hasn't even started. The people that hate it on Letterboxd right now just actually hate the movie. When the film comes out, that's when you're going to get people who are review bombing it because they haven't seen it and they're just angry about the subject matter. If Anora slides from being the number one and Emilia Perez goes a little bit higher than what it is right now, then Gascon is going to start to look more and more like Olivia Colman in The Favorite to me. But at the moment, I don't feel confident saying that Emilia Perez is stronger than Anora. That's why Gascon takes the second place for my Best Actress category.
I know a few months ago, after you had saw Emilia Perez, we were talking about, can she get in if she's lead, or will she be better off in the supporting actress race? And now she's here in the lead category. We both have had her in for a while, and now she just keeps rising up in the ranks. I currently have her number 3. You have her here at number 2. There's some people out there who currently say that she is even stronger win competitive than Mikey Madsen. Some people have even said she is a season sweeper. That claim doesn't make as much sense to me.
She's too divisive. The film is too divisive to be a season sweeper, I think, in any category. Even supporting actress, I don't think that's a sweep.
I tend to agree with you there, and I think that Gascon, while she may be super strong for the win at some bodies, I can see others flat out just leaving her out, because I feel like you said, this is a film that's going to be loved by some, hated by others, and one of my bold predictions I want to make right now is I feel like she will be the big exclusion from SAG this year, because you go back to last year, Sandra Hüller, who I would say was even stronger in the race than Gascon is right now, she missed out on SAG, and I feel like that trend's going to keep continuing year after year.
But they're very different movies. Anatomy of a Fall was more art house. This is essentially a Baz Luhrmann musical, which is why I have a feeling you're going to like Emilia Perez quite a lot. I would actually say, I think Emilia Perez wins SAG Ensemble. ensemble.
I currently have in my top 3 for ensemble, and I have the other 2 getting in. I just feel like it's going to be one of those things where they leave her out for a few different reasons, especially to what SAG kind of always does is say like, hey, we have a respected actress or actor we really like. Let's get you in here when some of the other bodies may not be giving you as much love.
I don't think your logic makes sense here, Dylan. To say that she'd be left out because she's a foreign language performer like Sandra Hüller was last year, but Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez still make it, despite the fact that they're also Spanish language performers in this case. Yeah, they might be Hollywood stars. They are still performing another language. And if the film has the visibility to be seen with those 2 in it, I don't see why they would exclude Carla Sofia Gascon when they're giving the other 2 nominations. That would be the same as saying Sandra Hüller missed, but like Milo Machado made it or something like that. That would never happen for Anatomy of a Fall. I just don't think they cared for Anatomy of a Fall at SAG.
That possibly could be the case, that they didn't care whatsoever at SAG, but I think if you would have put someone, I don't know, throw out some random big A-list Hollywood name in the supporting actor category to play maybe her defendant lawyer, then maybe I could have seen him get in compared to Sandra Hüller. But a lot of people are mixed here with Emilia Perez in terms of its potential nominations. Some people think it could be the nominations leader. Other people kind of laugh at that. And I feel like that's the case for our next person that you're going to be talking about, because there's some people who think she's very firmly in this lead actress race, and there's other people who kind of laugh at the idea. And I mean, you go back to our Filmball game, which drafted just over a month ago. This film only went in like under half of the leagues.
Which is wild. So many people didn't pick The Outrun. Because Saoirse Ronan, she's coming for a double nomination. And yes, absolutely true. The Outrun will not be the strongest film. But Ronan's performance seems to remain one of the strongest, especially as we're seeing so many other contenders leave the race. And not just leaving the race, but some of the other contenders in the race. I mean, I have Angelina Jolie in my top 5, and that film got mediocre, mixed reactions all around. People like The Outrun, so I don't see why you would count her out. And especially Apple's recent move to put her in supporting for Blitz seems to tell me that they believe she would not get nominated for Blitz if she was against this performance in the leading category. All of those things feel like they're leading towards Saoirse Ronan getting a double nomination. She's playing a role that feels like Reese Witherspoon in Wild. That is a great counterpoint for The Outrun. Wild was not a huge picture contender. Wild was not a hugely visible film, and that film got 2 nominations.
The double nomination, it just seems weird because I don't think she's going to be the youngest person ever to get this double nomination, especially if both these films aren't as strong. If The Outrun continues its same length, I want to pose the question, if only one of these would go, I know you haven't seen either of these films, neither have I, which one on paper seems the more stronger, this in lead or the film that may be a bigger contender but maybe less of a showcase type performance in supporting?
I'd say if I had to choose one of them, it would be The Outrun. I'm still not that confident in Blitz. I just don't see why she can't get a double nomination, especially if what we keep saying is true. Both of these actress categories are a little bit thinner than normal. They are not as deep as we typically have been seeing year in, year out. I mean, both of us have struggled to make a supporting 10. I mean, it's easier to form a 10, I think, for Best Actress. Contenders keep dropping out of the race. I don't see why we can't fit her into both categories.
I guess my biggest drawback for her being in both categories is typically, at least recently when this has happened, their films tend to be very strong. You go back to Scarlett Johansson, both of her films were in Best Picture. You go to Jamie Foxx, one film was in Best Picture, the other one was just outside of Best Picture that year. I just see it struggling to form the momentum. I feel like the momentum will help one or the other, depending on which one ends up being stronger down the line in terms of the performance, not just the film overall. It could prove me wrong. Like you just said, we had pretty empty categories in both lead and supporting where she could find her way into both. I would just like to see both films be a little bit stronger than when they currently look at this moment.
That is fair enough. I just think this is a different year than what we've seen in the past. And Saoirse Ronan is a performer that has defied expectations in the past. She was what, like 12 years old when she got her first Oscar nomination for Atonement? It's been 17 years since then. Like, she has been around the block. She is young, but she is a powerhouse who has continually shown that she is the best in her generation.
And I agree. The point that you just made right there was a very similar point to the one I made about Chalamet in the lead actor category. So I can't knock that one there. The only other really drawback I would have for this is Sony Pictures Classic. We've talked about in the past. They're great. when they focus on one. When they have two, it's another question, and they have her. They also have both ladies in The Room Next Door, and both of them are now confirmed to be in the lead acting category. So that's 3 people. Obviously, they're probably not pushing both Swinton and Moore. The talk seems to be more Swinton is the priority. So if they have Swinton, if they have Ronan, can they both coexist here? Or would Sony Pictures Classic be like, no, we believe more in this performance, this film overall?
I think a lot of the time it's just going to come down to coincidence that they don't have 2 films that are strong enough to really do that campaign. I mean, I think back to like 2022, Hugh Jackman and Bill Nighy didn't coexist, not because they didn't try, but because people just didn't like The Son. Those 2 performances could have coexisted if The Son did better. I don't think that Bill Nighy only existed because Hugh Jackman dropped out of the race. That's not how I see it, and so I don't see it as an either-or thing with The Room Next Door or The Outrun. But that said, looking at Tilda Swinton versus Julianne Moore, yes, both are being campaigned as lead. The more clear lead in the film is Julianne Moore. I would consider Tilda Swinton to be a supporting role, but in the credits, they are co-billed. Tilda Swinton would have been a win contender in supporting actress. She's not here, but she is much stronger than Julianne Moore in the film despite having a smaller role. I do believe Tilda Swinton gets in. I think she would have been stronger in supporting actress because she doesn't have as much meat to the performance as some of these other performers. For example, Saoirse Ronan seems to be on screen for 80% or more of The Outrun, whereas I would venture a guess that Tilda Swinton is maybe on screen for 40% of The Room Next Door.
And then that brings us to our final person we're going to talk about in the lead actress category, and it goes back to our favorite Volpe Cup winner stat that we had break last year, and now we're back again. Nicole Kidman, baby girl. We both don't have her top 5, but do you see an avenue for her to survive in this race?
I see an avenue for her to survive. I think it would rely on her getting into the Critics' Choice Awards as well as SAG. Ultimately, though, I have difficulties seeing this happen, especially with A24 having so many other films to juggle. Nicole Kidman is a very strong performance, but I don't think they have the bandwidth to campaign her, so her campaign would kind of have to happen on its own. And to have such a sexually explicit performance, one that is so dependent on its sexuality, I feel like a lot of the voters that are going to be voting for this type of role are already on Team Mikey Madison. The performances are similar enough, in my opinion, that I would just stick with Madison as the one representative of the people who are a little bit more daring with their votes.
Well, that's going to bring us over to the supporting actress category, and you can see the top 10 there. Don't mind the Ariana Grande and Wicked. You see this category. You see how empty it is. But someone I do see getting almost every precursor now is Zoe Saldana for Amelia Perez, and this goes back to our first read of this film when you saw it, hearing a lot of other people. At least to me, this kind of jumps out of the page, being like, hey, it's a performer who's been around for a long time, hasn't really had their time to shine. They're singing, they're dancing, they're in a role that has such a large amount of screen time, and it could be frauded into the wrong category. And I would say at the moment, she seems like she's our front runner, similar to Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers last year. But just like Randolph in The Holdovers last year, it doesn't feel like a sweeper to me. I know Randolph went on to be a sweeper, but this just doesn't feel like someone who's going to win every single body. Just my question is, who else is here to potentially take one away, because Amelia Perez is so divisive. Deadweiler, I guess, is a great shot there. It just goes back to what I said before, is the Piano Lesson was saw at 2 different festivals, and at both of those festivals it seemed to get lost in the shuffle. I know we talked about this before. In the lead actor category, once the film comes back out, once it's seen again, does it have a resurgence? Does it soar to a potential win, which we've talked about before? Netflix really struggles to do, and I know that we have this here with Amelia Perez and Saldana here. That's another reason why I'm not sold on this winning. But if they're going against each other, they're going to have to propose one of them to be the win contender. And the one that's in the Best Picture nomination at least gets the edge to me.
You can say, I told you so, as I fought continually against saying she's got to be in lead actress. This is the worst category fraud since 2015's double whammy of Rooney Mara and Alicia Vikander, but that's exactly why she'll win. It's just interesting in the era of reverse category fraud, where instead of performers trying to get into supporting to get an easier win, they're moving out of supporting because they want the shine of getting a lead actress nomination instead. Zoe Saldana, she category frauded in the right way, and it's going to get her a trophy.
We talked about potential category fraud for Lady Gaga and Joker Folia Dub. We were both so adamant that she's gonna be lead. This is gonna be a two-hander film, and we both kind of took an L there. She is a clear supporting actress in this film, not as much screen time as both of us were envisioning. However, from the people that I've heard from that actually like this movie, they say that she tends to be the best part, and I could see Gaga living in this empty category to be the above-the-line support for Joker Folia Duh. We both see this film actually in just a few days, maybe by the time this video is out, but she's going to be campaigning this year. I know there was talk of will she campaign, will she not? It was kind of slow at Venice, but she's hitting the ground running. She's done a lot of TV already. She just announced she's releasing an album adjacent to the character of Harley Quinn. She's going to be in the voters' minds. She's going to be in the voters' ears. She's going to be in front of the voters' eyes. I get this film's divisive. I get it's not the first one, but in a category that's so empty, from a performer who is so big, who is going to try so hard, she's going to try to make herself in this top 5. The question is, will she stick or will she fall? And I'm currently just looking at the landscape of this category, thinking that she's in here and that she could even be top 3, but more likely she's in probably the bottom half of this category.
You've said that you've heard people saying she's the best part. I have certainly not heard that. Most of the reactions that I've heard say that she feels very wasted in the film, which makes me feel like the role itself isn't good enough for her talent. And I know that you have a lot more confidence in Joker still. In my eyes, if the movie is fully dead, I don't feel like this is the type of role that can survive, because everything I've heard has just said that she's underserved, she's underwritten. Though she might be giving her most, she might be doing her best, there's just not much for her to do.
Well, talking about not much to do, this category, that's why I'm talking about Toni Collette, juror number 2. It's officially back in the race, world premiere AFI Festival. Before this was potentially punted to 2025, some people were saying Collette, original screenplay, Nicholas Hoult could be in the running for nominations. And I'm gonna hold off on putting any of this stuff into my top 5, but it is a Clint Eastwood movie. He's very hit or miss. We saw Richard Jewell, Kathy Bates got a nomination with only a Golden Globe precursor, and Toni Collette could be doing this here in juror number 2, because at least the premise on paper sounds like it's going to be an avenue for actors to showcase, because it's a courtroom. There's potential. We need names in this category, because all the people we've been saying for months just don't have the roles or don't have the films. Both of our worries with Anjanou Ellis-Taylor and Isabel Rossellini proved to be true. They each have like 2 scenes to do stuff. While they may be really good in those scenes, it doesn't seem like it's enough for films that aren't strong enough in Best Picture to get them in a coattail nomination. So I don't currently have Toni Collette in, but I could see if this film is a audience type hit, because Clint Eastwood films tend to be much more populist than they are criticky. And if this could hit like a Globe, it could hit a SAG, maybe she could find her way into like a 5th slot, but most likely this is something that people want to say is happening, and it's not really happening at all.
I don't see it at all. I just think people have been hope-dicting a Toni Collette nomination ever since Hereditary. Never works out, and it will continue to not work out, as every single time Toni Collette has a role, people will go, this is the one. This is it. They did it with Nightmare Alley. They're doing it with this. I don't believe that Eastwood has it in him. I would have her outside of my top 10 even. I do think, however, that Felicity Jones should be in your top 5. With a film as strong as The Brutalist, I don't quite understand why you don't have her in your top 5.
I guess the big thing is I'm not as strong for The Brutalist yet. I guess that's the big disparaging here from people who have seen the film. Clearly the people who have seen the film believe in it very strong. This film is coming out in limited December 20th. It's going to have that Zone of Interest rollout that we talked about in our last episode. And while Zone of Interest I think did very well with nominations, especially with its wins, I think it could have potentially done even better had it been seen a little bit wider. And I just want to see what A24's plans are for The Brutalist, because so far, at least with regional film festivals, they're only sending it to ones that can show it in 35 or 70 millimeter. It could change here in the future, but currently that's all we have to go on right now. And at least someone who lives in the domestic landscape, there's not a lot of theaters that can do 70. If that's their initial plan, maybe pre-nominations and then sending out digitally to theaters afterwards, that could work, but I also feel like it could lead to a few categories where it might not hit as strong. I currently am not in the camp of Brutalist being 10 plus nominations. I feel like, at least from some of the buzz I have seen online, this is a category you could maybe take a nomination away. But to some stuff I've said before, if Gaga isn't for real in Joker, that film is completely dead. If Saoirse Ronan isn't being double nominated, Blitz, you could take her out here, then Felicity Jones is my first one to come in the category, even if I don't want to double nominate the Emilia Perez with Gomez and Saldana. If I take any of those 3 people out, Jones is the one to move in. I guess I'm kind of living on to strands of hope for earlier predictions of Gaga, of Ronan, keeping them in here where maybe it makes more sense to have Jones in my top 5.
So let's move over to the supporting actor category, where my win pick is a brutalist contender. The same way that the opening lines of The Godfather are, I believe in America. Well, I believe in the brutalist, the Godfather of our times. Guy Pearce's performance in this is ferocious. It is huge. He is chewing the scenery. The first time we see Guy Pearce, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and he carries that energy through the entire film. Not only is he the comic relief, but he is also the horror of the film. A lot of the themes, which I won't get too deep into here because I want people to discover a lot of this film on their own, he represents a lot of what the film is talking about in regards to the American dream being gatekept for certain people. And not only that, comic relief, the fact that anytime he's on screen, he's making the audience laugh, and he's doing the most. It's one of those performances where he is never subtle. It's not bad that he's sort of over the top at all times. It fits with the character. Plus, Guy Pearce is a performer who has been around for a very long time and has just never had a role where he's able to be showered with praises. I think this is a role and this is a movie where people will finally be able to say, you are great and you've been great for your whole career. This is just finally the opportunity that we have to give you your flowers.
I definitely agree that the buzz is there so far. A lot of people, including yourself, when they see the Brutalist, they make sure to mention how great Guy Pearce is inside this film. I think he's so strong for a nomination. I honestly haven't seen the film, but like I keep saying over and over again, I just find it hard for the Brutalist to walk away with so many #1 prizes where like I could get maybe Pearce or maybe Brody, but both of them seems a little bit of a stretch, especially after a year like Oppenheimer where we had both of that and Everything Everywhere, which I guess isn't the great case to make because we've had 2 straight years of a film taking a bunch of acting nominations. Maybe it happens again. I currently still have Macklin for this category. I think he is going to be able to kind of appeal to the opposite side of voters of more of that type of vote here. But I think the biggest thing for Pearce is Pearce needs to be a sweeper. I don't feel like Pearce is someone who's going to win at the end of the day on like a mixed bag type vote where maybe he has BAFTA and maybe that he has Critics' Choice, but someone else has Golden Globe and someone else has SAG. I feel like the vote may go somewhere else. And I feel like Pearce is someone who needs to kind of win all those awards because at least listening to you talk about his type of performance there, I hate when people do this, but I know some people really like when they do this. It sounds a lot like Mark Ruffalo in Poor Things, where he's very loud, he's representing the bad of the film, he's goofy, he's much stronger than Mark Ruffalo ever was in The Race last year.
To clarify though, I don't want to give the impression that he's playing it silly like Mark Ruffalo is. I mean, that was a comedy. The Brutalist is very much not a comedy. I would say the funny parts of Guy Pearce's performance are that he plays a very, very rich man who is so rich that he has the privilege to be kind of delusional. And so a lot of the things that he does are spontaneous because he has the money to be spontaneous. If anything, he's a bit of a scarier character than he is a funny character, but he does ridiculous things that do make him quite entertaining. Like, for example, there's these scenes where he'll have long, deep conversations with Adrian Brody's character, and he'll clearly not be paying any attention, and then he'll say, I find our conversations to be intellectually stimulating. Don't you agree? And it's very funny because in all those situations, we're clearly watching him zoned out, not really paying attention, but he's the type of character where his wealth and the way that he's moved through American society and up the ladder of success has kind of made it so that he doesn't have to pay attention. He doesn't have to put the effort in. It's not a Mark Ruffalo performance. It is much more grounded than, being slapped and going, ow.
What you just described seems like what Coppola is trying to make Shia LaBeouf do, but
Absolutely.
Failed miserably.
100%. Everything about The Brutalist is just what Megalopolis would have been if it was made by someone who wasn't senile.
I would love to hear your case for Jeremy Strong because I made the case for Sebastian Stan earlier, but my big reason for pro Stan was they're going to center the whole campaign on him. So do you see them both coexisting, or do you think the campaign will center on Jeremy Strong's character?
I think the campaign will center on the chemistry between the two characters, and it'll be about both of them. It won't just be about Trump. It'll be about this is the man that made Trump Trump, and you have the Trump performance, but you also have Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn's not an unknown name either. I mean, he's the main character of Angels in America, potentially the greatest American piece of theater ever written. He's also just well known in the political sphere. People still talk about Roy Cohn as potentially like the dirtiest lawyer of all time. And so to me, this is not a performance that's going to go under the radar. It's not like he's playing some nobody. And if he's in a film where Sebastian Stan's getting all this acclaim, every review, even the ones that don't talk about Sebastian Stan, they're talking about Jeremy Strong. They're saying that he is incredible because he is. He's fantastic. They're both great. And if you have enough visibility to the acting branch to get a Best Actor nomination for Sebastian Stan, I don't see how people would put Sebastian Stan down on their ballots without also including Jeremy Strong.
Those are great points there, and we would love to hear all of your points out there. We just talked about 4 categories, but we can't hit on everyone who could potentially get a nomination. So let us know about the people we missed. If you have any bold takes on the supporting or the lead acting race, and especially we're about to dive into director and screenplay. Get ahead of the curve. Let us know who you want us to talk about. But until next time, my name's Dyl.
And my name's Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.